So in this video, I wanted to talk about 3 things to keep in mind when you're learning to solo with the minor pentatonic scale. The first one is, remember there's really only 5 notes to this scale. You know, we're taught this big shape, and it's great and all, and lots of times we're just kind of given free rein to play whatever we want with that big shape. But we don't have to use all of those notes all the time. And sometimes it's good to limit yourself and kind of stay in one position or area of the neck. And this is especially true when we're learning how to just navigate the chord changes themselves. And the main thing you can do here is just to outline the chord changes by hitting the root notes of the chords that are happening. So I'm going to put on a basic A minor blues track, and we're going to kind of go over this concept by just staying in one area of the neck and outlining the chord changes. So I'm really clearly outlining that A. Now the D minor is happening, so my fingers on the D. Back to the A. F7. E7. Back to the A minor. So in that example, you kind of saw that I just stayed basically in this one part of the scale. I didn't use all the... And the main thing that I'm doing is I'm training my ear to listen for when the chord changes happen. And that's really key to do. Now, that's just outlining the root notes. And you can take this, of course, a step further by outlining the thirds of the chord, or the fifth of the chord, or the seventh of the chord if it's a seventh chord. So you can do this a concept and apply it to different type of chord tones, but for now, just to learn, the main thing is always going to be the root notes really going to pull your ear to that chord change first. Concept number 2 is, you'll notice I didn't play a lot of notes. I wasn't doing a lot of flashy stuff. I was mainly sitting on some notes. And that's really teaches you to be more vocal-like. You know, as a vocalist, when you're singing a song, or if you listen to great blues players, they're not going, they're not scatting a lot, like a jazz person might be. They're trying to say something, and lots of times on the guitar, especially in the blues, we're really trying to emulate the human voice. And so to do that, you don't have to say a lot with all the notes that we're given. So take your time and purposely choose your notes wisely and play them. And lots of times you can also get away with this. If you know the chord tones in your scales, you'll see that there's some common tones sometimes between a couple of chords. So as an example, if I'm playing A minor, this is made up of A, C, and E. If I'm playing a D minor 7, it's D, F, A. Well, you'll notice that A note is a common tone between the A minor and the D minor. So we can exploit that a little bit and hang on the A note when that D happens. Listen. There's the A note. I'm going to stay on that A note. Sounds great still. It sounded good because that's a common tone between those 2 chords. So here's a really simple exercise that you can do that I think will help you so much, and I wish I did it a lot earlier. Anytime you have a chord progression, in this case here we have a chord progression of a basic blues. Any chord progression though. Go ahead and write out the notes on a piece of paper that make up those chords in each chord. So if I were to write this down, I write A minor, I would do A, C, and E. Then I would write D minor, and I would write my chord tones, D, F, and A. Now, these become your target notes when you're practicing the solo. But here's the problem, folks. Lots of times we're taught the patterns first on guitar. We're never really taught to take time to learn the notes. We're just, here's a nice shape, and you can solo in that and you'll sound great. Well, take time to learn the actual notes that you're playing. So if we're playing A minor, we have A, C, D, E, G, and then it repeats. A, starting over with the A there. So again, only 5 notes really that you have to memorize here. But more importantly, now put on a backing track, look at your piece of paper, and when those chord changes are happening, start to target the chord tones that you have written down based on the shape that you're in, or where you are on the neck. I think you're going to find this revolutionary because you're actually learning to listen to the chord changes and to target the chord tones at the same time. So here's another tip for you. When you're practicing to solo with the minor pentatonic scale, make sure you use dynamics. Actually, this applies to any scale and any solo. When we're talking, we use different inflections in our voice, or we emphasize certain words, or we back things down. Do the same thing with your musical voice. And you'll notice when I was practicing, some notes were softer and quieter than others. Use that to your advantage. Lots of times we just play the same thing or the same volume of notes. Which sounds more interesting to you? That or... So make sure you practice with dynamics. So to recap this lesson, when you're learning to practice to solo with the minor pentatonic scale, first remember that it's really only 5 notes and we don't have to play the whole entire pattern. Number 2 is when you're soloing, make sure you start to outline the chord changes. First start with the root note. And remember, make a cheat sheet for this. Write down on a piece of paper the chords and then the chord tones. And when the music is going by, listen for when those chord changes happen and start to target those notes when your fingers are lining up for it. And that's going to require you to know the notes of this pattern that you're playing. So make sure you take time to learn the fretboard notes as well. And the final thing is, make sure that you're practicing with dynamics and really learning to say something in your solo instead of just blowing through a pattern. And sometimes the best way to stop that, to stop yourself from blowing through a pattern, is to play less notes and really say something with the notes that you are choosing. And remember to look out for also common chord tones.